Today on the Hobby Bench, I'll be talking about Corvet, a Starship Miniatures wargame. So, I am a fan of Starship combat games, and I used to play Firestorm Armada. I was a pretty big fan of that system, and unfortunately, the company sort of just went out of business. I understand that the owner sort of had some health issues, and they sold off the IP to another company, but I think that's sort of in development hell. I know there's some rules floating out there that you can still get some online, and they're still sort of working on some ship designs and stuff like that. There's, basically the game you can still get and download, but I think, actually getting it released, we'll see. Maybe sometime in the future that may happen. But, I was sort of looking around and trying to find something that would sort of scratch that itch a little bit of playing some Starship combat games. And I came across this game called Corvet, which is still being designed. It's very much a draft, a work in progress. There's a free Google Doc that's available, and I'll put that a link into the comment section. But I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about, what makes this stand out from some other games. But one aspect I really enjoy about this is it does have a little bit of an energy management system. And in that case there, it reminds me of, a deep love I have of Starfleet battles. I used to love this game. And it was just crazy the amount of time I used to spend playing this. And of course, a big aspect of this one is that you have your SSDs, that you allocate your energy to what you're going to go out and play out your turn. There's specific impulses. There's a very regimented way of when movement starts, who acts first, how weapons are attacked and resolved, and that kind of thing. And I love this game. A little bit of a simpler one, of course, that came out from GMT Games is Talon. They sort of have the same kind of thing. There's an energy allocation. And then you sort of have a set impulse turn order where ships at a certain speed or certain energy allocation will activate. It has its DNA very intertwined, I think, with Starfleet battles and that aspect of that. But Corvet is its own little thing, and I like it. I like it a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's pretty light tactical combat right now. I know that they're trying to maybe expand some more rules for ship design and maybe get out a little bit more weapon systems and stuff like that. But it's fun and its own little thing. And what I like about this too is it has a little bit more of a crew management step in this. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time now talking about Corvet. So Corvet is a small tactical starship game. You're sort of running around in, I think, maybe some sloops or corvettes, probably, less than a frigate class type craft. And you'll be typically helming about 2 to 3 ships. And you just sort of duke it out pretty much. There's a couple scenarios. There's another one that's a little bit more engaged where you have a star base. You try to destroy that star base. And I'm sure, as the rules develop, they're going to have more scenarios. But that's generally the feel for it. It's sort of a quick and dirty dust up in space. And how this works out is you have your starships, a representative player, and every starship will also have a craft tactical overview of your starship and some of the different systems that you have. And this is the aspect I think that really makes it stand out more from some other stuff. And this is sort of a neat way of how they manage this here. You're actually going to have your ship and your crew members that will man certain stations and sort of run around and do repairs when it's needed. So there's different phases you do. You'll have initially in an engineering phase, they'll have some special orders that you can have. You blow out the airlocks to get rid of any fires, or maybe overload the engine to get some extra energy. And of course, if you have some damage, ongoing damage, they'll take care of it. And then you're going to activate your crew members, and each one's going to have 2 actions. And there's a little layout of the ship. So to move over to certain sections, that takes an action. And sometimes you even have these empty areas that are corridors. So if I want to move from the helm to the reactor, that's going to take 2 actions. One to go in this corridor, and another one to go here. Obviously, as you're taking damage, you can repair that or put out fires. The other aspect too, which is sort of clever, is that you can say, I'm going to man a certain station, like this railgun here, this front arc. I'm going to actually man it and have my crew member, sort of influence how well that will operate during the game. So you'll sort of allocate out your different actions to your crew members. And then you're going to redistribute power. And so your reactor will have a certain amount of power. In this case here, I have these little tokens here, about 6. And you're going to just assign this to different ship systems. Say for the engine or for the shields, I want to bump up my shields a little bit more. And of course, I have my weapons, so I'm going to put my weapons in, let's say, my railgun. After you do this, then you have a movement phase. And I like this. It's very clean and very simple. You're going to have a movement in inches, and whatever direction your ship is facing, it'll move. And there is an activation order based on initiative. So, whoever has the highest initiative moves, then it's the other team member, and you sort of go back and forth a little bit. And it's very clean in that aspect of movement. What I like about this game, too, is that they encourage lots of different terrain. So there's hazardous terrain, so you'll take actual damage going through those fields, or there could be ion storms that would just possibly take a powered system and take that offline. Or you'll have like just a dust cloud that would just impede shooting through them. Once you've done your movement, then you go into the activation phase. And then this gets a little bit more of a tactical choice of what you're going to do. Because whoever has initiative gets to activate one system on their ship. So it's if I have a lot of damage on my shields, I could say, well, I might get pounded. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the shields. And I'm going to spend that energy, whatever energy you have there, and return it to your pool. And then I might think, well, if my helm, I want to bring my weapons to arc, the bear. So I'm going to head and activate that helm then, and that will do that action. And that can influence my speed. And so, well, now I'm lined up. So what I'm going to do in my next activation after you go is I'll activate my railgun that's in my front arc. So I'll be able to roll and do an attack and resolve that. And then afterwards, I'll say, well, now that my speed's reduced, I'm going to increase it again with my engine and bump it up so that next turn I can move a little bit faster. And that's sort of a fun way of doing the system. And what I like about it too, particularly, is that, once you activate a system, that's it. So if I have a little bit more energy in my helm, I've got to make that choice immediately. What I'm going to do, how far I'm going to turn. I can only activate it once. Now you got some flexibility there. So let's say if I have a helm and it happens that you move a certain way, and I think, you know what? I don't want to do anything. I think I'm lined up the way I am. I don't want to maneuver out. I don't want to change it. Well, you spent that energy, and you can say, well, I activate it. I'm just going to get rid of it. I don't have to do whatever I have that energy allocated towards. And that sort of gives you a little bit of flexibility there. As for the weapons, there's a handful of different weapons, and they do some different things. The railgun, for example, just fires multiple shots. The range is typically about 16 inches or so for a lot of these things. Atomic laser will hit once, just fire one shot, but you can power it up a certain amount of power and potentially get a little bit harder hits. They have different firing arcs. They're pretty simple on those, that they're basically 90 degrees. So you have a forward arc and then usually have a side arc. And that sort of works. I love, working with me on Firestorm Armada because, you're using the square bases. But if you have different kind of bases, that can work out fine too, just as long as you can get those 90-degree arcs. It's pretty simple, pretty bare bones. For rolling out damage, it's pretty easy that you'll go ahead and just roll the hit. You have some defense scores that can modify that. Again, if you're firing through terrain, that can reduce that. Another aspect too is that if you have your helm manned, you can always get a chance to really effectively dodge. You roll a die, and if you roll a 6, then you dodge that hit. You miss that hit completely. And that's really a little bit clever there for that. Rolling the hit too, which is sort of neat, is they do have, so basically when you're doing damage, you're going to go ahead and go through the shields first. And then if you have a hit that's left over, you're going to roll a random location. And that will mark somewhere on your outline of your ship. In this case here, roll a 6, and so there's a little area here. That means my railgun. So if I took a point of damage, I would put that damage there. If you have some energy on that, then you'll lose energy equal to the amount of damage that you put on. Every system's going to have a certain maximum. In this case here, the railgun has 3. So when you have 3 damage on that one, if I take another hit there, and that's exceeded the amount of damage that that location can take, then I take damage on my hull points. Now, this is what your crew can do. You can run around and you can repair. So for one action, I can repair damage. So that's sort of what you're doing, is you're frantically running around and trying to repair damage, because once you get hull damage through, you can't repair that. And of course, when your hull drops to 0, you're out of the game. And so that's a fun way of playing the game. I'll talk about some weapon systems too. You also have, say, seeker missiles. They're really short range. They pretty much automatically hit. They do a lot of damage. There's also an ion pulsar that'll basically attack a station and remove its power. You also have a hacking device that can basically activate a system. So if I'm lined up and I'm ready to shoot at you, I can maybe like shoot you with my hacking system and basically take your guns offline or activate your helm and maybe make you move. Then, it's a pretty neat little thing to do with that. And so there are a few weapons. There's just a little bit of flavors with them. I'm sure that they'll probably expand those out. Now, another aspect too about shooting, which is sort of fun, is that, if you roll a 6, that bypasses any shields and you automatically do damage. And in addition to that, you're going to get a fire. So when you have a fire in a location with that, what will happen is at the very beginning of your turn, that will automatically take 1 damage. And then you got to frantically get your guy over there to basically put that fire out. So if you don't do anything, or this might happen here, that you have a system over here, there's a fire, taking some damage, and now next turn comes through, I automatically take another damage, and then I'm going to frantically get over here and take care of that fire. If I don't do anything about that fire, it's going to keep damaging the system. And once that system's basically offline and destroyed, then I'm going to start taking hull damage. And so that's what you're just trying to do, is you're going to get these fires that come out because of basically critical hits. And then, of course, getting more damage on top of that. And then your cruise is frantically running around just trying to put out fires and trying to repair damage. Once a system, say these seeker missiles here, when it receives a full amount of damage, I can't use that either. So, it might be an opportune time. Oh man, I really need to fire these seeker missiles. We're close in. I want to be able to pound you and just do a ton of damage. Well, I can't do that. It's offline. So I've got to move my guy over and then try to repair it. That's what you're frantically trying to do in between turns. I love it. It's so much fun. I'm still trying to figure out what you're going to do for these crew members. Right now, I'm using these Starfinder pawns, and I sort of did a review of these. They're pretty cool little miniatures. I guess they're basically space goblins and space gnomes. That's what I'm sort of using as my crew members. But it's this little management system here and allocating power and then trying to have your crew run around and repair systems or man certain systems so that you can fire more effectively or move more effectively. It's very clever, and I truly enjoy this aspect of the game. It's engaging, and it's just a lot of fun. Now, this is a beer and pretzels sort of war game. There's a fair amount of luck involving. If you're rolling 6s, you can mitigate that some. Being pretty clever with how you line up your ship and trying to utilize terrain to get penalties for shooting, and of course, allocating energy and thinking about, do I, maybe I want to buff up my shields because I know I'm going to get hit. And then at least at the end of this turn, I can repair those shields again. So there is some thinking in how you do your energy management. And of course, you're maneuvering and sort of pre-plotting out, what you're going to do the turn, like once everybody moves, what firing arcs you have, that sort of thing. But it's a light war game. Still, though, I enjoy it. It's just fun. And it's free for now. The developer is really keen on doing a lot more work into the system and making it a little bit more robust. They might have a little more ideas of directional damage for shields and stuff like that. But still, I think what they want to do is just make it a fast game, a fun game that's not bogged down in too much. I mean, this is not going to be Starfleet battles. You're not going to get that type of experience from this. But it's still engaging enough to play. So I got to say, as final thoughts for that, Corvet, it's a fun game. Definitely, if you want to try to find some starship combat, something that's a little bit more of a, just a fun game to play with a bunch of folks and, sort of sit down and pilot a couple ships and blow each other to hell and just have a lot of fun doing it. Definitely try to check that out. It's free, like right now so far, and I'm sure that once they get that going, they'll probably have it available as a PDF to play. And I think that the developer would appreciate, I guess, more folks trying it, maybe get a little more feedback. As for me, I'm going to try to make sure I play a little bit more to Corvet on the tabletop.